Robert Mueller, 911 truthers should be treated as terrorists. Yes, because someone trying to find out whether the government lied to them or not is the same as blowing up a building. Sure, right. Wonder why the government doesn't want people going through trying to find out what happened on 9/11. Just saying. Robert Mueller says those seeking the truth about what really happened on September 11 should be treated as terrorists and monitored by the FBI and Department of Homeland Security, or DHS. Okay, you're not doing a lot to sort of quell the conspiracy theorists here, are you? Back in 2012, when Mueller was director of the FBI, he ordered the Bureau to send out flyers instructing law enforcement officers to treat people who refer to themselves as 911 truthers as possible terrorists. Okay. 12160.info reports, that's right, our government is teaching state and local law enforcement nationwide that 9/11 truthers should be immediately looked at as possible terrorists. In an FBI Bureau of Justice document on spotting a potential sleeper cell within the United States, it specifically states that someone may be a terrorist sleeper agent if they believe the CIA had a hand in 9/11, a fact that has been heavily documented by thousands of experts. Rogue elements does not mean the entire CIA. Late last week, Intelligence Hub contributing writer Madison Rupert wrote an extensive article that highlighted the details of the 25 flyers that were sent out. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, has routinely released their Communities Against Terrorism advisories in the form of flyers, which encourage the public to report suspicious activity, something which the DHS has heavily promoted under their Say Something citizen spying program. Though releasing these flyers, the FBI has effectively made most active activities possible indicators of terrorism. Many of those are so innocuous it's almost laughable to think of them as hints of terrorist activity. Those are indicated to make people of the United States live in a constant state of fear, constantly on their lookout for non-existent terrorists lurking behind every corner. This also helps create a culture of citizen spying in which neighbours are reporting on each other for what would otherwise be considered noteworthy activities. Thus, it makes it easier for the government to track down suspicious descendants, since just about everything they do is likely to be considered suspicious when applying for all the absurd guidelines promoted by the FBI. Although all the supposed possible terrorist indicators are absolutely absurd, the fact the FBI chose to specifically target 9/11 truthers shows how important, even after 10 years, covering up the truth of the horrendous 9/11 attacks is to the powers that be. In August 2011, a video report from media outlet Russia Today highlighted a bill introduced in Congress that would allow indefinite detention of any American that the government declares as a terrorist or terrorist sympathizers, which we now have with the NDAA. Okay guys, so I was going to include the video to the actual RT link, but this has come up. I'm running late with my videos today, I really am, and I've got about 3 or 4 I want to make. If I find the video tomorrow or so, I will put a link to it in the description below, but you can have a fairly good idea or good guess from the description what the video is going to be about. But yeah guys, I apologise, I did try and view the video, tried to add it to this video, and it was no longer available, so I apologise. But like I say, if I find it, I'll add it to the video at a later date. The report specifically spoke about the possibility of 9/11 truthers being locked up though throughout the country, and now with the FBI flyer specifically stating this very thing, questioning 9/11 is becoming an increasingly dangerous use of freedom of speech. Meanwhile, the fact that the United States and Israel openly support and funded an Al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorist group in Iran, or MEK, is in the public domain, yet everyday Americans are being labelled terrorists by the very officials who either indirectly or directly support terrorists themselves. Yeah, very good point. Al-Qaeda is supported by the US. ISIS is supported by the US. It's... You're literally going on about your civilians being a bunch of terrorists because they're trying to find out whether you blew up a building or three. And you literally fund terrorists. So work that one out. In an article written by Tom Kadasi, I might be mispronouncing, on his Land Destroyer blog and syndicated on the Intelligent Hub, outlined the document facts that show that high-level US politicians and Israeli government openly endorse and support the terrorist group MEK, or MEK, listed by the State Department as a terrorist organization. It was also revealed in Seymour Hersh's 2008 New York article, Preparing the Battlefield, that not only had MEK been considered for their role as a possible proxy, but the US had already began arming and financing them to wage war inside Iran. Quote, the MEK had been on the State Department's terrorist list for more than a decade, yet in recent years the group has received arms and intelligence directly or indirectly from the United States. Some of the newly authorized covert funds, the Pentagon consultant told me, may end up well in MEK coffers. The new task force will work with MEK. The administration is desperate for results, he added. The MEK has no CPA auditing their books, and the leaders are thought to have been lining their pockets for years. If people only knew what MEK is getting and how much is going into its bank accounts, and yet it's almost useless for the purpose of the administration's intents. Seymour Hersh, in an NPR interview, also claims that selected MEK members have already received training in the US. It was also revealed that US forces in Iraq had provided MEK main company with security, and while the recent withdrawal from the US troops from Iraq, the United States Department and even the UN have been scrambling to find a new safe haven for the US-listed terrorist organization. Even more unimaginable is the fact that many of the foremost fearmongers and proponents of the war on terror are engaged in desperate lobbying efforts to get MEK delisted by the State Department. In October of 2011, a full-page ad was taken out in the Washington Post on MEK's behalf. Okay, so we do have that, and it leads to this. I won't put a link to, I won't go through the whole article, but the headline is MEK rally planned for Friday at State Department. So supporters of the MEK movement are planning their largest ever gathering in Washington on Friday in front of the State Department. Obviously the link will be in this, which will be obviously linked in the description. If you want to read that article, please feel free to do that. US politicians and many of the prominent proponents of war on terror appeal to the President of the United States to delist MEK as a terrorist organization. While the hand-wringing humanitarian concerns are cited, what the ad fails to mention is that MEK has long been sought after to serve as an armed US proxy to be turned on Iran and carried on a campaign of terror, as stated clearly in the Brookings Institution Which Path to Persia report. Among those signing the statement made in the ad were John Bolton, Howard Dean, Rudy Giuliani, that's interesting, Ed Rendell, and Tom Ridge. When reading the statement, it must be kept in mind that the Brookings Institution already confirmed that MEK was a terrorist organization and that had verifiably killed US military personnel and civilians. Considering the fact that 99.9% of the so-called 9/11 truth movement have been completely peaceful, the logical conclusion as to why 9/11 truthers and other everyday Americans are being labeled as possible terrorists while certain American and Israeli officials publicly work with real terrorists is because the threat they pose to the military-industrial complex, police state takeover plan that has been in the works long before 9/11. You can read the full document here. Okay. So at the end of the day, what's the takeaway from this article? So look, at the end of the day, the fact is that the government or the US government is pushing to list 9/11 truthers as possible terrorists. They're claiming that it could be some sort of key or some sort of signal that it could be a sleeper cell. But then this article is saying that those requirements are so vague that basically you can use anybody to do that, and that they're so vague that anybody is a possible sleeper cell. Also, it does go through and foster a culture of dobbing in your neighbor. So yeah, at the end of the day, it does make complete sense why they would do it. They obviously want to go through and decredit the 9/11 truthers. Does make you wonder why. You know, why do they spend so much time and effort trying to debunk 9/11? You know, if you want to debunk 9/11, simple. Release the footage of the Pentagon being hit by a plane. That Pentagon has more cameras on it than you can poke a stick at. You haven't got one decent footage of the plane hitting the building. Really? That'll be a neat trick. I don't know, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Do you believe that the government was behind 9/11? Do you believe that it was a bunch of peed off Muslims that slammed the plane into the building? Do you believe that the government actually knew about it beforehand and just let it happen because they wanted to cover up all this money that was disappeared the day before? I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. If this video has been helpful, please smack a like. If you're new, channel welcome and subscribe. Apart from that, guys, I'll see you in the next demonetized video from YouTube. Have a great day and enjoy.